how can we judge our marketing efforts from the last year and any objectives that we might have had? So this, I think, is kind of for somebody who isn't working with an agency, kind of didn't really have a plan in place. What can we look back and be like, hey, how can we better what we were doing?
Well, a couple different things I guess I'll talk about. One of the things I would look at is, at the beginning of the year, if I were to ask you to fast forward and say, what does success look like with regard to your marketing, what would you have said? And then how can you compare what actually happened to what you would have said? So one of the things I always talk to people about is we have a way of normalizing whatever is going on, good or bad. Like the last couple of years when there was a lot of stimulus money and, business went through the roof for a period of time, everybody sort of upped their normalization to being like, okay, this is the new normal. And then when things sort of settle back down to what would have historically been more the norm, I think people felt like their business was down. But what I've really been talking to people about this last year was, let's compare like Q3 of 2023 to what would have been a pre-pandemic Q3. And in most cases, almost all cases, people are actually doing pretty well for Q3. But they got so skewed over the pandemic period that became their new normal. So you really have to kind of look at the numbers in a variety of different ways and make sure you're not being, pulled to think that, hey, this year wasn't the same as last year, but, forgetting the fact that other things, or if you're in like a certain type of business, like we work with a lot of people that are in the flat glass business. Sometimes people forget that it's like, oh, we landed an 80,000 square foot job and this year we didn't. So is our business really down, or did we just not land that once in a decade project that skewed our numbers for the year? So you really have to take a close look at your numbers and really analyze how your business did. I like to look at things in a bigger time period, than weekly or monthly, because sometimes the revenue could have just fell one way. Weekends could have fallen one way. So if you're looking at things quarterly, that's a good way. Also, some people have the ability to break down what their daily average sales were over the period, and that's always a good indicator. It helps smooth things out a little bit to show how you actually did. But the other thing I always tell people is if you're really judging it on marketing, if you take the total amount you spent on marketing, whether it's for advertisement, whether it's for, management fees or whatever, the hope should be that you're getting roughly a 10x return on that. So if you spent $10,000 in marketing, hopefully you can attribute $100,000 in sales to the $10,000 that you spent. Kind of works both ways. A good rule of thumb for a lot of people is you should spend 10% of your revenue on marketing, but your marketing should be generating roughly, like, if you spent $10,000 more this year than you spent last year in marketing, did you grow your business by $100,000? That would be another kind of quick check to think that is my marketing working for me?
No, absolutely. It's funny. It's maybe not specific to marketing, but at least kind of why I think it's so important here coming in the next year. And how you utilize it in the last year is on a big macroeconomic scale. I'm hearing like the United States, everybody's savings is kind of shrinking, whether, like you said before, was from the stimulus and kind of how things are going. So I think people are being a lot more particular about what they're buying. I know I am, whether it's food or clothing, whatever it might be, or specifics, especially this time of year around gifts, as far as what you're getting or who you're getting for. A lot of times it's, let's just get something for just the kids or whatnot. But I think being able to tap into what people are needing specifically and kind of being able to share that through your marketing efforts, I think is kind of key and able to capture those customers that you really want and be able to grow and be able to make sure that marketing money is being used efficiently. So I think that goes along with it, is realize, and I'm sure everybody, it's like introspect it yourself. It's like, how are you utilizing your money? How are you kind of being, not I want to say taken advantage of by marketing, but how are things hitting you in a way that you're then turning around and spending on, or just monitoring what you're spending, I guess would be the sum of what I'm trying to say, and to realize how is that marketing affecting you, and realizing maybe that's something to think about as well as, hey, these are the items I spent my money on that were more important, but here's a couple fringe things that I got, and why did I purchase those things?
The other thing to think about too, a lot of people don't realize, especially when you're talking about social media marketing or Google AdWords, it's all based on supply and demand. So as people's businesses have slowed down post-pandemic, a lot of people are trying to stimulate those sales back up by advertising more. So advertising, the number of people advertising has increased, especially as we get closer to the holidays. The number of people advertising has increased. Well, what does that mean? That means for every lead or for every click or whatever you're trying to achieve with your marketing efforts, it's become more expensive, because the more people that are advertising, the more expensive it's going to be. So when you look at your marketing efforts, also keep in mind that right now the cost per click and things like that tends to be a little bit higher, because there's more people right now in an effort to stimulate their business that are advertising. It's always true in Q4. Q4 is always the busiest time of the year. So your cost, the cost to get things accomplished is going to be greater than it is in Q1 through 3. But this year, I feel like a lot of people were so busy through the pandemic time period that a lot of them had fallen away from advertising because they were as busy as they wanted to be without advertising. But now that the business is settling back down, they're jumping back into the advertising pool, and that's created a whole different dynamic where it's costing more money to get the same results today than it did a year ago.